People often do not see how strongly pets get attached to them. Especially when it comes to dogs, whose loyalty is legendary. They usually choose one main owner and are ready to do anything to protect the person they like from trouble, demonstrating incredible devotion in the process. However, sometimes the price of such selflessness can be very high. During the Perestroika period, a young family decided to move closer to the capital. The young man and woman had married 2 years ago and had already had a child. It was a difficult time, and the family had to live almost in poverty. Although the head of the family worked as a plumber and seemed to have the opportunity for additional earnings, it was tough to make a living in the city. Therefore, people tried to do such work themselves. After discussing their situation, the husband and wife went to Moscow, believing that there would be more opportunities for earning there. Moreover, the head of the family had an aunt who owned a small apartment on the top floor of a Khrushchevka. She had recently moved to a more modern 9-story building. The woman refused to take money for renting the apartment but set a condition that her old dog would stay with the young couple. The relative did not want to take the animal with her, fearing that it would ruin the fresh repairs. At first, the dog was very sad, but then it quickly became attached to its new owners, especially to the man. Only he could feed it by hand and walk it calmly on the street, and it obeyed all his commands without question. The animal listened to the woman less. The aunt's apartment turned out to be quite clean, but for some reason, the young hostess often encountered cockroaches in the kitchen. She tried to get rid of them, but nothing worked. Soon, she learned from neighbors on the landing that homeless people lived in the basement of the building. The residents were afraid to drive them out, and the district officer turned a blind eye to the uninvited guests. The tenants tried to contact other authorities, but it was all in vain. Due to unsanitary conditions, bedbugs, cockroaches, and even rats ran around the entrance. After listening to the neighbor's story, the young woman became very upset, but in the evening, she still asked her husband to seal all the cracks in the apartment so that insects and small rodents would not get in such numbers. However, this was not the main problem in the building. The vagrants living in the basement caused a ruckus every evening, illegally using electricity. The kettle that the homeless used to heat water was homemade and lacked any insulation. This could only lead to disaster. One night, a fire broke out. The residents of the first floors reacted quickly, leaving their apartments and grabbing the most valuable things. However, the upper floors were less fortunate. By the time they woke up from the noise and realized they needed to evacuate, the fire had already blocked all exits. At that time, the whole family was peacefully asleep. They were awakened by the dog. The animal was pulling the blanket off its owners and barking loudly. The head of the family ran into the hallway and opened the door. He was immediately engulfed in flames as the fire sought oxygen to spread. Unfortunately, the man died on the spot. The firefighters arrived a few minutes later. By that time, the woman was in a semi-conscious state. They managed to pull her outside. Only at the entrance did she come to her senses and start screaming that a child was still in the apartment. Only one volunteer was found who wanted to go through the open flames. When he reached the threshold of the apartment, the firefighter stopped. Almost completely black from singed fur, the dog was dragging the child across the floor. The animal held the baby by the collar with its teeth. The man grabbed the child and ran downstairs. But for some reason, the dog did not follow him. It stayed in the hallway near its owner's body. The animal did not come out of the fire. The dog could not survive its owner's death. But before its demise, the loyal pet managed to perform one last act of heroism, to save the small child from the flames. Once its duty was fulfilled, it did not leave the deceased person alone. The animal stayed with him, and whimpering in pain, it followed the person into the afterlife.